At my cousin Tessa's engagement dinner, she raised her glass, looked right at me, and said, "I hope I never end up like her, single with a kid." The room erupted in laughter, not polite laughter, real, hard laughter, like she'd said the funniest thing all night. My Uncle Reuben clapped the table and added, "Men don't want used goods. That's just how it is." Even my own mother let out a little chuckle as she reached for the wine. I sat there, frozen, my face hot, heart pounding, trying to act like it didn't matter. But then something unexpected happened. Dylan, Tessa's fiancé, stood up. He didn't smile. He didn't say anything at first. He just walked slowly across the room toward me. The laughter died. Chairs stopped shifting, forks paused midair. Every single person turned to look. And then Dylan said, "I think they should know something." The room went dead silent. I got the invitation a month before the dinner. Cream-colored cardstock, gold lettering, perfectly over the top. "Join us to celebrate the engagement of Tessa Rowan and Dylan Hart." I stared at it for a long time before putting it down next to a stack of unpaid bills. Tessa and I hadn't spoken in more than 7 months, not since she made a joke at a baby shower about how I collected diapers and bad decisions. I laughed then, to keep the peace, but it sat in my stomach like a stone. I wasn't sure I could sit through an entire evening surrounded by people who still looked at me like I was some teenage cautionary tale, even though I was 33, raising my son on my own, working 3 jobs, and keeping our little apartment afloat with some late-night freelance gigs and prayer. I almost didn't go, but my mom called me 3 times the day before. "Tessa's family, Soraya. Just smile, eat a little, show your face. It's one evening." She didn't say it out loud, but I knew what she meant. Don't cause a scene. Don't make anyone uncomfortable. Blend in. So I found the nicest dress I had, which was 2 years old and just barely zipped. I borrowed shoes from my neighbor. I let Milo pick the necklace I wore. He chose a little silver heart that he said looked like his. When we arrived, I could already feel the tension tucked behind the floral arrangements and fake hugs. The restaurant was upscale, private room, low lighting and soft music, expensive wines lined up like trophies. Everyone wore elegance like armor. Tessa floated across the room in a fitted silk dress and too much perfume. She kissed me on the cheek like I was her distant aunt. "I'm so glad you came," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Did you bring a +1? Or just Milo?" "Just Milo," I said. "Oh," she said and turned to greet someone else. Milo was sent to the kids' table with a coloring book and chicken tenders. I was seated near the end of the long white draped table between my mother and Aunt Valerie, who spent the first 10 minutes showing me pictures of her dog's Halloween costumes. I scanned the table. My Uncle Reuben, Tessa's dad, was already 3 drinks in. My mom looked like she'd been trying to stay invisible since we walked in. Across the room, Dylan stood quietly by the bar, talking with his younger brother. I noticed how he kept checking his phone, how his smile looked forced. It was clear who the room was for. Tessa was glowing under the attention, working the crowd with practiced charm. She always knew how to make people laugh. When the appetizers came, my mother leaned over and whispered, "Just keep your head down. You look nice." Nice. Not beautiful, not strong. Just nice. Like that was the highest compliment she could give. I nodded. I tried to enjoy the food. I tried to breathe through the awkward silences and the occasional pointed looks from relatives, who still thought my son was some stain on the family tree. I made small talk, laughed, when expected, and passed the butter, but inside I was holding my breath. I didn't expect kindness, not really, but I didn't expect what came next either. When the main course was cleared and glasses were refilled, Tessa stood up. She raised her champagne and tapped her fork against the glass. She waited for everyone to quiet down. I thought it would be a typical toast. Love, gratitude, a few awkward jokes about wedding planning. I wasn't ready for what she actually said. I wasn't ready for how the room would laugh. And I definitely wasn't ready for what Dylan would do next. Tessa tapped her glass with a silver fork and smiled like she was on stage. She waited until the room quieted, all eyes on her, soaking in the attention like it fed her. Dylan sat beside her, silent, hands folded. I watched his eyes flick toward me for a brief second, then back to the table. He looked tired. Tessa raised her glass. "Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. I can't believe I get to marry someone like Dylan. He's patient, smart, and most importantly, he puts up with me." Laughter rolled through the room. Her voice was smooth, polished, confident. "Really, though, I just hope our marriage lasts. I'd hate to end up like some people." She turned her head toward me, just slightly. "Just enough." There was a pause. "I mean, single at 31? With a kid?" She laughed. The room exploded. Not a few awkward chuckles. Real laughter. My aunt actually wiped her eyes. Reuben slapped the table, wheezing from his own joke before he even said it. "Men don't want used goods," he said. "That's just how it is. You can't trade in a dented car and expect full price. My stomach dropped. I looked to my mother. She gave a weak smile and reached for her wine. I wanted to vanish. I stared at my empty plate, my hands in my lap, gripping my napkin so hard it wrinkled into a knot. I could feel every eye glancing toward me, not long enough to count as confrontation, just long enough to confirm the punchline. I was the punchline. I thought of Milo, just a few feet away, happily drawing a spaceship on a napkin. He didn't hear it. He didn't know they were talking about his mother like she was some second-hand dress in a clearance bin. Aunt Valerie leaned toward me and whispered, "Oh, honey, she didn't mean it. Tessa just likes attention." It wasn't just attention. It was venom in a glass flute served with dessert. I sat up straighter, refusing to let them see me flinch. My cheeks were burning, my heart thudding so loud I could barely hear the background music. I glanced at Dylan again. He looked at his hands. His jaw was tight. He wasn't laughing. Tessa continued like nothing had happened. She made a few more jokes, this time about how she made Dylan get rid of his gaming console and how he would never survive marriage without her. The laughter was softer now. A few people looked uncomfortable. My mom fidgeted with her bracelet. No one said anything. That was the worst part. No one said anything. They laughed because it was easy. Because it's easier to laugh at the woman who didn't do it right. The one who had a baby without a husband. The one who showed up alone. The one who didn't smile wide enough or play along. I thought about standing up. I thought about grabbing Milo, saying something sharp and walking out. I had the words on the tip of my tongue, something like, "At least I raised a human being while you were still uploading bikini photos for validation." But I didn't say anything. I swallowed it. I sat there and let the heat climb up my chest and into my ears. I took a deep breath and reminded myself that I was here for one night. That I would go home, tuck Milo in, and not give any of these people another thought. Then Dylan stood up. He didn't say anything at first. He just pushed his chair back and walked around the table. Everyone stopped. Tessa blinked. Reuben reached for his glass. My mother stared at her lap. Dylan walked all the way down to where I was sitting. The sound in the room flattened, like all the oxygen had been sucked out. He looked at me, then looked at the table full of people, the family he was about to marry into. And then he spoke. "I think they should know something," he said. No one moved. No one laughed. In that moment, everything shifted. Dylan's words hit the air like a stone dropped in still water. "I think they should know something." The room didn't just go silent. It paused. Every clink of silverware, every nervous giggle, every movement froze. My cousin Tessa blinked, confused. Unsure if this was part of some surprise toast she hadn't approved, my Uncle Reuben lowered his glass. My mother turned slightly in her seat, finally looking at me instead of past me. I couldn't breathe. Dylan was standing directly beside me now. Not behind me. Not halfway across the table. Right beside me. Close enough that I could see the way his jaw was clenched. I expected more humiliation. Maybe he was going to agree with them. Maybe he was about to say something I'd never recover from. He looked down at me not with pity, not with shame, but something else, something solid. Then he turned to face the rest of the room. "I don't think I can sit here and let this continue," he said. His voice was calm but clear. Not loud. But strong enough that no one dared speak over him. "Tessa," he said, looking at her now. "That wasn't just a joke. That was cruel." She opened her mouth, but he held up his hand. "I need to say this." His eyes scanned the room. "You all laugh at Soraya like she's some kind of failure, like her life is this thing to avoid. But what you don't know, what you refuse to see, is that she's the strongest person in this room." My heart was hammering. I didn't understand what was happening. I could feel 25 sets of eyes on me, but Dylan never broke his focus. He went on. 2 years ago, when I was at one of the lowest points of my life, Soraya helped me, not just with job leads or encouragement, but with real support. She gave me her time, her energy, her kindness, when no one else in this family even noticed I was struggling. People began to shift in their seats. Tessa's smile had vanished. My mother's hands were folded tight in her lap. When I got laid off from my tech job, I fell into a depression. I started drinking too much. Tessa told me to snap out of it. Her dad told me to stop being weak, but Soraya checked in on me. Every week, she helped me clean up my resume. She put me in touch with someone she used to work with. She even watched my niece when my sister had surgery just so I could go to job interviews. She never asked for anything. She didn't expect credit. She just showed up. He turned toward me again. "You didn't know me well, but you saw I was drowning, and you pulled me out." I felt my throat close, not with shame this time, but with disbelief. Dylan turned back to the table. "So when you laugh at her, when you reduce her to some stereotype, when you act like she's broken or used or whatever disgusting thing Reuben just said, you're not insulting some abstract figure. You're insulting the person who helped me get back on my feet. You're insulting the kind of woman I wish more people could be. Tessa stood up now. What are you doing? I'm being honest, Dylan said. I've sat through a lot of fake smiles and shallow compliments tonight, but I'm not going to sit here and watch you tear down someone good just to make yourself look better. Tessa's face was hard. Are you trying to embarrass me? No, Dylan said. You did that on your own. A few people looked down at their plates. My uncle's face was flushed red. My mom looked like she wanted to disappear. No one moved. No one said a word. Dylan looked at me again. You didn't deserve that. Any of it. I wanted to say something. Thank you. Or maybe I'm fine. But I couldn't. Just nodded. That was all I could do. In a room full of people who claimed to love me, Dylan was the first one to actually stand up for me. Not behind closed doors. Not later over text. Right there. When it mattered. The air had changed, the story had shifted, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't shrinking in my chair. No one moved. The room stayed suspended in that thick, unbearable silence after Dylan finished speaking. I could hear the hum of the overhead lights. Somewhere in the distance, a server dropped a tray. No one laughed. No one dared. Tessa was still standing, staring at Dylan like he had slapped her in front of the entire family. Her cheeks were flushed, but not from embarrassment. This was rage, pure and sharp. She looked around the table, searching for someone to save her, to back her up, to redirect the spotlight. But no one spoke. Uncle Reuben shifted in his seat, then finally muttered, "He's just emotional. Don't take it so seriously." Dylan didn't even turn his head. He kept his focus on the room. You want to talk about emotion? Fine. Let's talk about what it actually takes to raise a child alone, to hold down 2 jobs, to show up for someone when it's not convenient. That's not emotion. That's strength. Tessa crossed her arms. Are you trying to say you have feelings for her? Dylan looked at her like he didn't recognize the person in front of him. I'm trying to say I admire her. I respect her. And maybe if you spent less time performing perfection and more time listening, you'd understand why that matters. The words landed harder than anything he'd said before, because it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about truth. It was about someone standing up in a room full of people who had built their self-worth on hierarchy and polite cruelty, and finally calling it out for what it was. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked at me with something like guilt, like recognition that maybe she had failed me too. For years, she had told me to keep quiet, to forgive, to smile through it. Maybe she was seeing for the first time how deeply that silence had cost me. I didn't expect an apology, not from Tessa, not from Reuben, not even from my mother. I wasn't waiting for redemption. But I could feel the shift. Something cracked open. Then Dylan turned fully toward me. He didn't touch me. He didn't reach for my hand. He simply stood there with the quiet kind of presence that felt like protection without possession. You deserve better than this, he said. I met his eyes. I didn't look away. Not this time. I stood up slowly. My hands were steady now. I looked down the table and saw a room full of people who had spent years defining me by the one thing they disapproved of, as if one chapter of my life had erased every other page. I saw Tessa, furious but silent. I saw my mother, finally speechless. I saw Reuben trying to shrug it off with another sip of wine, and I felt no fear. I turned to Milo, still happily drawing spaceships. At the kids' table untouched by the storm, he looked up and smiled at me. I smiled back. I think we're going to head out, I said to no one in particular. I wasn't asking permission. I walked to Milo, helped him gather his crayons, and picked up the picture he'd drawn. A little rocket ship flying toward a sun with big, uneven rays. He handed it to me like it was gold. Did you have fun, baby? I asked. He nodded. Are we going home? Yes, I said. We are. Dylan stepped back, letting me pass, but he gave me a slight nod as I walked by. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a message. You were seen. You mattered. You weren't wrong to stand tall. As I reached the door, I looked back once. No one was laughing anymore. Tessa sat stiff in her chair, her lips pressed into a line. Reuben scrolled his phone like nothing had happened. My mother stared at her glass, her fingers trembling just slightly. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need approval. I had told the truth by simply existing, by not shrinking, by not leaving in shame. And Dylan had backed that truth in front of everyone. That was enough. I opened the door and Milo slipped his hand into mine. We left together, steady, unshaken. The night air felt different the moment we stepped outside, not colder, just cleaner, lighter. Like the weight I had been carrying for years had finally lifted, not because someone took it from me, but because I stopped pretending it was mine to carry. Milo skipped ahead a little on the sidewalk, humming as he waved his drawing in the air like a flag. I watched him, and thought about what it had taken to raise a boy, who was still joyful, still full of light, even when his mother had walked through fire to keep that light alive. I used to see my life through the lens of what I had lost, the relationship that didn't last, the family who never understood, the security I gave up when I chose to have a child alone. For years, I let their voices tell me what I was worth. I absorbed their disappointment. I wore their judgment like it was mine to fix. But walking out of that room, hand in hand with my son, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not pride, just clarity. They weren't laughing anymore because someone finally told the truth, not the story they built around me, but the story I actually lived. I didn't need a man to validate me. I didn't need my family's approval to make my life real. I needed honesty. I needed someone to say, out loud, that I was more than the worst version of their assumptions. Dylan didn't fix me, he didn't rescue me. What he did was more powerful. He saw me, and in doing that he gave the rest of the room no choice but to see me too. That moment wasn't just about defending me. It was about breaking a cycle. The kind that tells women they are only valuable if they come with the right packaging. The kind that calls mothers selfish for being alone. The kind that labels strength as failure if it comes without a ring. My mother texted me later that night. One sentence. I'm sorry. It didn't undo anything. But it was something. A crack in the wall. Maybe even a beginning. Tessa didn't reach out. I didn't expect her to. I don't need her apology. I no longer measure my worth by what she thinks of me. What I needed was exactly what I gave myself, permission to leave a place where I was being diminished and walk out whole. I put Milo to bed when we got home. He was tired but happy. He didn't ask about the dinner. He didn't ask why I looked different. He just curled into his blankets and told me he loved me before he closed his eyes. I sat in the living room, still in my dress, and let the quiet settle. I thought about all the times I had wished to be invisible, all the times I had tried to make myself smaller so I wouldn't offend, wouldn't embarrass, wouldn't be the subject of whispered judgments. No more of that. I have walked through enough alone to know I never need to apologize for surviving. I have raised a kind, curious, loving child. I have built a life with grit, with grace, and with a heart that kept beating even when it felt like no one cared. So if someone ever tries to laugh at that again, I will not stay silent. I won't shout. I won't cry. I will do exactly what I did that night. I will stand, I will look them in the eye, and I will walk out, hand in hand with the one thing that proves I have already won. Not because I'm perfect, but because I refuse to quit. If you've ever been the one they talked about behind the smile, if you've ever felt like the punchline in a story that was never fair to begin with, I want you to know something. You are not used goods. You are not damaged. You are not too late. You are enough. Right now. Just as you are. And you deserve to be seen. So many of us spend years shrinking ourselves to fit into rooms where we were never meant to stay. But healing starts the moment you stop apologizing for your truth. If this story made you feel something, if it reminded you of your own strength, your worth, or a moment where you stood up for yourself, I hope you carry that with you. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to walk out. You are allowed to start again. And if no one's told you this today, you're doing better than you think. If you felt this story, like the video so others can find it too. Comment below and share your story. I read every single one. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that speak to the heart, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a moment that might just change the way you see yourself. And if someone in your life needs to hear this, share it. You never know who's waiting to feel seen. Thank you for being here. Do subscribe.